Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. I apologize on my video, it's not working, but you guys are lucky, I guess, on that one. I'm the Senior Advisor for Strategy and Conservation International's Center for Sustainable Lands and Waters, and it's an honor to be able to host this session. As the header for the session highlighted, traceability is a complex issue with everyone pursuing traceability independently. This burden of complexity really ends up upstream at the co-ops or at the first level aggregators who have to manage multiple systems for multiple customers. At the same time, we're also seeing increasing regulatory pressures around traceability and due diligence coming from the markets, which will only increase the complexity upstream, and they also may be imposing additional requirements. And so with that kind of landscape, would like to open it up to the staff or the panel group. And we have Angela Tejada Chavez, Senior Manager for Mars Cocoa, Emmanuel Adem Opuku, Deputy Chief Executive of Operations for the Ghana Cocoa Board, Ashish Gadnis, co-founder and CEO of Banku, Nico Debenham, VP Head of Sustainability at Barry Callebaut, and Ruben Bergsma, the Cocoa Sector Lead for Rainforest Alliance. And with that, we'll start with the presentations, starting with Emmanuel.
Well, thank you very much, David. I hope everyone can hear me here. Yes, I have a very, I think 3 slides, and I hope I'm able to do within the time of 7 minutes. So traceability in Ghana, I'm sure most of you know already that we can trace our cocoa from the buyer to the society where the cocoa was first sourced by the LBC or the LBC's agent. Now, with current developments and emerging issues, there is a need for us to go further from the society to the farm or the farmer who submitted or delivered the cocoa for sale. So we're currently Hello? So cocoa management system. And what is cocoa management system designed to do or to achieve? It is just to fill in the missing gaps. What will be how can we trace the cocoa from the society to the farmer? Very good. So we are going to introduce this new system or initiative, which is going to be technology-based, and as an operating system that will enable us to do live updates or on-the-spot updates, and then every transaction that takes place will update it in real time. So what we are doing is that we are going to register all cocoa farmers and the land, the area they operate or the farm they are producing cocoa from. So any cocoa that the farmer delivers to the buyer will be registered, because every farmer after the registration will operate with only one unique ID, without which he cannot sell any cocoa. And this system, every information about the farmer and his household will be taken and recorded into that operating system. And then the area that the farmer is cultivating is also measured with a GPS, at the exact GPS location. So all farmers will be brought, all Ghanaian cocoa farmers will be brought on this new system and then issued with an ID which they will use in all cocoa transactions. So without which no farmer can sell cocoa in Ghana. And we have about 12 months to complete this process. It started a couple of months ago with a pilot, but now we just rolled out the main program, which we expect to roll out by next year, October. So what happens? in this discussion we are doing right now. Now, what are the two key ones? We want to use the system to track progress of children in cocoa households. That's number one. And then we want to use the same system to see who and where cocoa, who is producing cocoa and where the cocoa is being produced from. So if a farmer has a specific ID, it means that Cocoa Board will know where his farm lies or his farm is situated. And so this system enables us to find out or to establish who is producing cocoa from a protected forest. We have an elaborate program where all such farmers will be taken out, working with the Forestry Commission on the Red Pass program, which we began and is currently ongoing. Can we move on to the next slide, please? What is this new system going to provide for farmers? They are going to use it in all cocoa transactions. We're going to, now farmers can contribute to what we call the Cocoa Farmers Pension Scheme, which the President of Ghana will be launching pretty soon. And we hope that will also start in October 2021. That's the contributions from farmers, because we after the program or the registration exercise, we will know the total number of Ghanaian cocoa farmers who are contributing to the total production we make, and from which location the cocoa is coming into the system. What other benefits the farmers stand to gain here? The payment system we've designed for this cocoa management system is that every farmer can be paid by electronic cash, and then they can use either the Momo or their bank accounts to get paid and then make withdrawals in all transactions. And then we also intend to use this system to deploy subsidies to the farmers who actually contribute cocoa to the total production. At the end of the day, if you are not a cocoa farmer, you don't benefit from this subsidy. And so subsidy will be directly paid to cocoa farmers using this system. And then what again, all interventions we will put in the, we will introduce or initiate in this sector. Before we do that, we know the exact number of cocoa farmers we have, the exact area of cocoa we under cultivation, and then what type of soils and what type of cocoa and the age class of all cocoa. So it gives us a lot of room to do a lot of work and analyze what to send to any location, and also help us to follow the progress of children in the cocoa sector. What we intend to do with that is that we will, once we register a child who is whether an old child, I mean somebody in getting close to adolescence or even a newborn, we just follow their progress from the age 1 to the time they become adults. And at any point in time, we can share this information with anyone who is interested to follow child labor issues. What we intend to do with that, well, as we follow progress of these children, any red flags will be shared with the ministry that can also set up or get in and then arrest the children, the parents, and then withdraw the children for remediation processes to go on. And so this program or this system is a very comprehensive system. And then also the original intention is to introduce 100% transparency in the cocoa supply chain in Ghana. Now, how is this system? What is the project flow? Can you move on to the last slide, please? We began with sensitization of farmers, and then the sensitization is still ongoing. We have sensitized our staff. We've met with almost all the various classes of staff. We've already spoken to some of our partners, particularly WCF and industry, and then we are moving to meet every stakeholder of the system. Currently, farmer education is ongoing in Ghana. We completed the pilots, and then now the full-scale implementation is on. So the sensitization will continue until the project is over, because we need to register every cocoa farmer in Ghana. We don't have time to go in detail how the registration and who will be registered in terms of the Bunu and Ebusa, all kinds of sharecropping system we have in Ghana. But then we move on after the sensitization. Then we have the farm data collection, where we register the farmer and his household members, including their children. And then after that, we go into the farmers' farms to measure their farms. It's interesting. What we know in practice is that we may have about 5 farmers sharing borders, but we know the strategy to adopt to ensure that we get all the boundaries, so there's no conflict. We move in as a group with with farmers that share boundary and measure their agreed boundaries, and then we have the system running. So after we've done all that, after the registration, we issue the farmer with a card. That card has unique identification and all the information we'll need for the transaction. And then the transaction platform will be created. That platform is what's going to be used for all the farmer sales, and without which, without that identity number, no farmer can sell cocoa. Not only farmers will be registered, but then also we are going to register all the LBC purchasing clerks. Every LBC purchasing clerk will also have a unique identification, without which you cannot buy cocoa on behalf of any company. Now, so after 12 months, when this system comes into operation, what are the challenges are we expecting? We know that this is a new system that requires a very serious effort in change management. We are doing our very best to make sure that every part of this industry that requires this new change will adopt it, will understand and adopt it. One challenge we still can face is the ability of the buyer's agents to understand how the system works and then maintain the traceability, because we want to close that missing gap, traceability from the farm to the to the buyer's agent and the society, so that even where the farmer, the buyer's agent collected cocoa from different farmers, and there's a need for him to do bulking of the cocoa, at the end of the day, because he has information of the information about the contributors of that cocoa in his system, when the rebagging is done, the identities of all those farmers who contributed to that bulk will be listed, or will be attached to every bag, so that traceability is not lost. We will know when you go into the system one after the other with the individual identities. You know from the location or the site of the farm, and this is to confirm that the farm or the source of the cocoa is from legal areas or legal landscapes, not protected areas. So and then the other thing, that other issues that we can foresee would happen is the training of our field agents. So I will use this platform and invite the partners, particularly the industries that have, especially the processing companies and other LBCs that have agents working with them. Maybe any need for support, we request that the support goes into training of the field agents, because Cocoa Board, I think that we are well resourced to undertake this project. And I think that with this, I will end here so other speakers can come in, but I will be ready to answer all the questions. I know that there are many questions in people's minds, but then I'm done for now until we get to the question session.
Thank you very much. The next presenter will be Ashish Gadnis from Banku.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. If you could just go to the next slide, I would appreciate it. Hi, so my name is Ashish. I'm one of the co-founders of Banku, and a couple quick things. So first of all, we're a software as a service company. We're a for-profit, for-purpose company built 100% on blockchain, but no cryptocurrency. And we solve three fundamental flaws in global supply chains when it comes to sourcing, like in terms of smallholder farmers, or distribution, like in circular packaging. I'll focus on the sourcing side in this picture for a couple minutes, and then we'll go straight into the solution. So there are three flaws that we've uncovered over the last 5 years when it comes to smallholder farmers. And I'll anchor it in two examples, which is one using AB InBev, Anheuser-Busch, because they use us in multiple crops in multiple countries, and Japan Tobacco in the tobacco industry for reducing child labor. And these both will be relevant to the cocoa industry. So the first flaw, if you look at this picture, is that in the traditional world, where you have a brand that is sourcing from the last mile farmers, the smallholder farmers, the farmer does not have equal rights in the transaction. And again, this is saying with all the humility and without being too controversial, the data is actually never owned by the farmer. So the data sits in a brand's database or an Excel spreadsheet or an NGO's database or an MFI's database or in a government database like the presentation we just heard. The issue with that is at the end of the day, the smallholder farmer is never able to build their own copy of the transactions of the cacao or the barley that they have sold to the co-op or to the transporter or to the buyer and so on and so forth. So that's number one flaw. And the second flaw is if you're looking at ecosystem elements like child labor, VSL participation, worker wage safety, other crops in terms of crop rotation, all of that data that is so critical to that farmer household is actually sitting in multiple silos. So somebody else is managing with ILO, the child labor statistics, somebody else is running a VSL program. The problem again with that is that farming family or that household at no given time can prove their economic passport. And then the third one, which is kind of then brings it together, is there's no leverage at the smallholder farmer level because their cocoa data or barley data is sitting somewhere else. They have information sitting in terms of their mobile money with Momo or M-Pesa, and their children's information around child labor statistics is sitting with ILO. If you look at that situation, which means that at no given time, can that farming household then say, hey, I exist in this sourcing supply chain, and I can prove all of these data sets as a part of my economic passport. So at the end of the day, if you're looking at traceability and transparency, yes, you might have traceability and transparency, but you're missing equity or equitable supply chain. So what we've done over the last 5 years is we've deployed for brands like AB InBev and Japan Tobacco, a blockchain-based solution that does something very simple on the front end, keeping in mind that the smallholder farmer may not have a smartphone. So let's take a specific example. If you go to the Zambia-Congo border today, there are thousands of smallholder farmers that grow barley, sorghum, and cassava. And when in this picture, they come to sell to the buyer or the co-op or the aggregator, using blockchain technology, they get an SMS message in the local language that confirms the price, the quality, the quantity, and the location. And that is their copy of the transaction on blockchain, number one. Number two, from a payment standpoint, especially from a security, women are smarter than men. We already know that. This allows women farmers now to get cash directly onto their M-Pesa account because we're integrated with local money, so no cryptocurrency. So we're talking about M-Pesa, Momo, or with example in Zambia with Zanaco National Bank, they get direct deposit on their bank account at AgriPay at Zanaco. And then third, every time that transaction is moving through that supply chain, they start building this history, which not only allows them to prove that they are a valid farmer in the AB InBev supply chain, but AB InBev can actually also attest to that. So if you're a bank, if you're an MFI, or if you're a seed input company, you can now verify the data on both sides of the transaction because blockchain basic definition, non-crypto, is that both parties get a copy of the transaction. So that's a very specific example around traceability, transparency, and equity. If you can just go to the next slide, because now I'll start weaving in the child labor example, is what we have now done is taken that same success with the agri supply chain now and extended into other areas. So with Japan Tobacco, again, public information, since 2018, they've been using our software in the same fashion, except this time, the child that is in class, the student attendance, keeping in mind data privacy guidelines, GDPR compliance, is captured on blockchain. Now you would say, what's the value of capturing attendance? Absolutely. The way it works is that the kid is in class and now the agronomist knows it, the farming family knows it, the brand knows it, and the local government knows it. And at the same time, the household never loses control over their data. Because remember, as I started this conversation, poor people, especially poor farmers, their data has been disintermediated and sitting in global companies' databases or Excel spreadsheets. Whereas the way we've looked at the world using blockchain, we don't own data. We're like the anti-Facebook. What BenQ does, it creates a network that gives you a very simple front-end interface. It's a non-interface. So the farming family household now can see their VSL information, child labor in terms of children in school or not, what's the proximity to their water access or sanitation if there are alternative crops. And the idea that we have now successfully proven is if you can actually bring these multiple data sets at the farmer household level, you're not only strengthening that entire ecosystem, you're helping brands achieve traceability, transparency, ESG, government regulations and things like that, but you're not leaving the farmer out in a silo where they cannot prove their existence in this supply chain. So that's what BenQ does. And we've had a ton of success. We're live in 41 countries, 600,000 people on our network. Half of them are smallholder farmers. And now we're starting to get into the cacao and the mining industry. Over.
Thank you very much, Ashish. And now we're going to hear from Nico Debenham.
Hi, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the environment that really is driving the requirement for traceability and transparency. We recently published, as Barry Callebaut, our direct supply chain on our website, giving the GPS coordinates of all of the warehouses of the co-ops and districts in Ghana and co-ops in Ivory Coast and co-ops in Cameroon. And we'll continue to do so until we get to 100% of our direct supply, and eventually be requiring that for what we call our third-party supply. This is just a demonstration of the environment that we are operating in now, which really demands and requires completely different levels of transparency, traceability, and accountability. And I believe that this will start to become a much clearer trend because of the different requirements that have come through, not just from customers, consumers, brands, etc., but also because of regulation, which I'll touch on a bit later. If we could go to the next slide. Obviously, one of the main challenges that we face in this industry, as we've heard a lot about today and yesterday, is farmer poverty. And how does traceability contribute to solving the challenges of farmer poverty? It's really all around data and around mapping and understanding the assets that farmers have. So for example, the farm size due to polygon maps can be accurate and explicit. Historically, one's always asked a farmer what is the size of their farm, and they don't necessarily have known historically. We did an assessment not long ago that showed almost 100% of farmers, when asked prior to a polygon mapping exercise what size their farm was, exaggerated the size of their farm, which then distorts one's approach to that farmer in terms of farm business plans and the development of a journey to help them to professionalize and work their way out of poverty, or certainly trying towards a living income. It goes without saying the effectiveness of polygons and traceability in the prevention and reversal of deforestation, and it is critical for all supply to be mandatory to be traceable for this particular purpose. And in addition, the data and the level of information that we receive whilst collecting 150 census data points per farmer and their family has enabled us to create a risk profiling approach to looking at how we deal with child labor, where we can create analysis of information to create communities as either red, amber, or green, and then prioritize the actions in the red communities and the red supply chains to ensure that we have a very efficient and effective approach. If we go to the next slide. And then obviously you have the consumer and customer demand. We're a B2B company, and we are supplying them and servicing brands and retailers. Brands and retailers have very, very high asset value related to their brand value. And then it is critically important, not only that they are seen to be acting with responsibility and due diligence, but also that they're seen to be making a change and making a difference. All of our brands and retailers are now requiring, as I say, the transparency and traceability and accountability, and being able to see the information down to farm level. It's not just about where did the cocoa come from, it's what's happening with the farmers. What is happening in their life? Where did we start with them? And where are we now? How are they better off? Why is their life better because of the interventions that the brands are paying for or actually intervening with them themselves? They want to know this information. It's critically important to them to be able to ensure to their consumers that they are acting in a responsible way and they are making a positive difference in their supply chains. And without traceability and the data that comes with it, this would be impossible to show. If you go to the next slide, the world is changing, and we've heard a bit about today about the European due diligence initiative, regulation on human rights and the environment. Already in the US, the Customs Border Protection are taking parcels that they believe may have infringements on forced labor, therefore, and also child labor, and asking parcels, the importer of those parcels, to prove the innocence of those parcels. It's not just cocoa, it's all raw materials, but cocoa is at the front line because of the accusations of child labor and the historical challenges cocoa has had. There is the country, we all know about the country initiatives, where there are, this is not regulation, but it is voluntary pledges. And these voluntary pledges are stating that by 2025, cocoa will be sustainable in many of these places. But more importantly, that by 2030, all the farmers who import into those countries, or who have grown the cocoa that is imported into those countries, have a living income. And those pledges have to report currently on something like 70 data points or 70 KPIs into these different initiatives. And without the traceability and the data that is backing up that traceability, we would not be able to do that. We heard earlier about European due diligence regulation, and we know that that's going to follow the same path. We will have to be able to prove that the raw materials that we import are not infringing human rights or the environment, therefore deforestation. We also know about the African Regional Standard, which is being created predominantly in Ghana and Ivory Coast, and will be in play, we believe, by the next crop, so 21-22 crop, and that again will require traceability and data to be provided to prove conformity to the elements of the standard that are being written at the moment. And then obviously we know about the elements of the living income differential. If we go on to the next slide. So for example, importing into Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, in Europe, these are all countries that have made pledges that the supply must be sustainable by 2025. 85% in Germany, 80% in Switzerland, but 100% in the other two countries shown here. That means all of those have to be traceable because you've got to prove they're sustainable. So without traceability, you cannot prove it. So we are now getting to a point, onto the next slide, where all of our supply is going to have to be traceable. So we have invested heavily and significantly in a platform called Cachile, where we have over 400,000 cocoa farmers on this as master data. And of those 400,000, over half of those have what we call full data. That means polygons of all their farms, plus 150 census data points. This has enabled us to understand at farm level the assets that a farmer has to work themselves out of poverty, to help them create a farm business plan and then support that farm business plan with credit and farm services, so that they then are able to start transforming into an efficient and effective business from where they are today. Without the data and without the ability to understand the baseline that these farmers are starting from, we would not have been able to do that. It also brings about a lot of other additional elements, like, for example, working with partners to create land ownership documentation, supporting the direct payment of premiums to farmers, because we can track the delivery per farmer and immediately real time to make mobile payments directly to those farmers. And then it also enables, as you can see here, the ability for brands to show consumers directly on pack what's happening and what's happening in the field, and how they are contributing to try and tackle the challenges that I showed earlier on in the slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nico. Very interesting. Next, we'll hear from Angela from Mars.
Thank you. Merci, terima kasih, or gracias. And I will just keep to English for the sake of the translations from now on. And I think my colleagues have done a great job in giving you some more context and introducing key concepts when we are talking about traceability. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus into what Mars is doing in one of our priority raw materials, which is cocoa. So we go to the next slide, please. You will see there, these are our 3 key priorities or goals when it comes to responsible cocoa by 2025. And when we launched our refreshed strategy in 2018, we decided that we needed to have 3 clear goals. And these, as you can see, are protect children, preserve forests, and improve farmer income. And what I will focus on a little bit more now is the preserve forest pillar. In this preserve forest pillar, our goal is to ensure that all the cocoa that we source is traceable and deforestation free by 2025. Being one of the largest end users of cocoa, we cannot do this alone. And we do this and we work hand in hand with our suppliers. You just heard from Nico, which is one of our partners, Barry Callebaut. And you have heard what is it that it takes to do this on the ground as well. But we also work with other experts organizations. And we even did a small pilot with blockchain in Indonesia as well. But we are also part of multi-stakeholder initiatives such as the Cocoa and Forest Initiative, which has been many times named during this partnership meeting. For us in cocoa, in Mars Cocoa, it's very important, like I said, to know where the cocoa originates. And to get to this 2025 goal of deforestation-free cocoa, what we need to know about the farming family. We need to know where the farm is. We need to know how big the farm is, and we need to know the boundaries with GPS polygons. And also, we need to know how much cocoa is really coming from that farm. And why is that important? Because then we can reward those farmers that are really making the effort, and they are making the effort, and they are investing their time and energy in trying to change their farm conditions as well. And it's a way for us to know which are the farmers that should be rewarded in the form of an incentive or a cash premium or other ways as well. But that's not enough, right? So it's not enough to know, and it's not enough how much cocoa is coming from that farm. We also work again with our suppliers and with our partners so that cocoa is kept separate until it reaches the first point of purchase or processing door. As you will see on the next slide, this is a snapshot of our 2020 report. And why I'm mentioning this is available on our website for everybody to read, and I do invite you to take a look at it. We work very hard to put this together. So as you can see there, we have mapped so far more than 150,000 farms with GPS polygon. Again, with the support and the partnership of our suppliers and expert organizations. But this is not just a point. We are talking really about the polygon and the boundaries for reasons that have already been very well explained by my colleagues. And we do that again because we know knowing the farm and family and the farm are foundational also to establish longer term partnership with these farmers and with the farmer organizations that are part of our responsible cocoa program. And as you see in this slide as well, so far we have reached over 180,000 of these farming families worldwide. On the next slide, going back to why this is important and to the theme of this discussion, what you are seeing there, can you go just one more click, please? And a couple more, and it will be fine. But beyond mapping, beyond all this mapping of the boundaries, what we also believe is nowadays is critical is supply chain transparency. And why is that? Because like Nico, again, sorry, Nico, this is the second time I'm referring back to you, but like you already well explained, this is a reality and this is what consumers and customers are expecting, including the retailers. Retailers and companies are expected to disclose where the products are coming from. They are expecting to tell the public where these products are being originated. And I'm personally very proud that many field technicians, suppliers, their partners, we have made great progress in this. And sorry, there's a little bit of the slides there, but first in 2019, we made public all the countries where we source cocoa from, and we made public all the suppliers that we work with worldwide. And in 2020, again, with the support, we were able to do what you are seeing on the screen. We were able to disclose all the farmer organizations that are part of our responsible cocoa program. And we didn't do this in a one way. We requested permission for every single of these farmer organizations. And why we did this? Because it's important to understand, like Ashit has already very explained, even if we do have the data and the information, it is not only on us to make it public. And to make it public, because it's a partnership, we do need to ask permission from these farmer organizations. And there is no point in collecting data alone for the sake of reporting. And what we believe is the data must lead to actionable insights that you will see on the next slide, please. So in this slide is two main examples. You see there are 4 photos, but there are 2 main examples. These 2 main examples, I'm going to start with the left. It's in Brazil, where when COVID hit Brazil, and this is close to our research station in Brazil, in Bahia, we were able to, because we knew these farming families, we provided some food support for these families. In Ivory Coast, we repurposed this and we worked together in the communities where we work with CARE. We were able to repurpose the work and provide hygiene kits for these communities. I'm going to go back to the Ghanaian one, but first to finish with Indonesia. The photo there in Indonesia, again, allowed us to take action in our supply chain because we knew where to provide this support in times like COVID hit, and it caused so many challenges already, even more challenges for the farming families and their communities. And the photo of Ghana, that is Nana Jao. I'm probably not making justice for his name, but this is another example in how data can lead to actionable insights. Nana Jao, he's from the Ahafo region of Ghana. And what we did with his farming family and together with partners, again, we didn't do this alone. With all this data that was collected, we created a tailored plan that was suited for his needs and also suited to what his farming and his family was able to do and deliver. And what I'm trying to say with this, if data does not lead to action, we have to question the value of it. And my last but not least, in the next slide, please, these are some examples and voices from people in the field in Indonesia, where we buy directly from farmers, a tiny bit. And this didn't take a year. And it took us many years, and it took so much effort from our field teams in Indonesia, and it took our leadership commitment, and it took our leaders to remain committed, which is also something that is critical. Leadership has to remain committed for a longer period, not for a short term. But we were able to make all these moves, and now I will not read all the messages. I will leave it for you to indulge yourselves. But as you can see, the benefits came for the farmers, the cocoa doctors or technicians, as well as the collectors. And lastly, my final thoughts is making public all the countries that we source from, making public the suppliers that we work with, and lastly, making public where the farmer organizations that are part of our responsible cocoa program was not an easy journey, and it took us years to get there. But I can tell you from personal experience that it's a very rewarding journey, because at the end of the day, we do this because really the world we want tomorrow starts with how we do business today. And like I said, if data does not lead to actionable insights and it does not lead to benefiting the farming family, then we have to question why we are doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Great presentation. And finally, we'll hear from Ruben from Rainforest Alliance.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, next slide. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Very happy and honored to be part of the session here. Thanks for the invitation and congratulations on making this event happen virtually. Berlin really seems like a lifetime ago. My name is Ruben Bergsma. I'm the cocoa sector lead at the Rainforest Alliance. The Rainforest Alliance is an international nonprofit organization. We're working at the intersection of business, agriculture, and forests. And we are building an alliance to create a better future for people and nature by making responsible business the norm. We're active in many sectors and crops, but we focus on coffee, cocoa, tea, palm oil, bananas, and forest products. And we also do much more than certification alone. Our key interventions are certification, also landscapes and communities, advocacy, and tailored supply chain services. But for this presentation, as it relates to this discussion on traceability, I'll focus on cocoa certification, where we work with over 900,000 farmers, over 3 million hectares in 21 countries. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll first take you through what we do as Rainforest Alliance on traceability. So this is the current state of traceability for the Rainforest Alliance in cocoa specifically. So this is of course a simplified version of reality. It's always more complex than a simple visual. And of course, this is for cocoa only. Some of the timelines are different in some of the other sectors that we work in. So since the merger of UTZ and the Rainforest Alliance in 2018, we are now one organization called the Rainforest Alliance, and we still operate both the UTZ and the Rainforest Alliance certification programs. The 2020 certification program has been published and the new seal is already appearing on products, but I didn't include it here on this slide yet because I'm focusing on the traceability side and there's no new standard volumes that have yet been produced or are in our supply chains. So at the moment we are working with 2 certification programs. And we have 3 traceability levels available. That's identity preserved, segregated, and mass balance. Just to briefly explain these, identity preserved, that's the strictest form of traceability. With identity preserved, it's possible to trace the certified product to one specific certified farm or group, and there's no mixing with non-certified products or with different farms. Then in segregated, there's no mixing with non-certified products, but certified products can be mixed. So the whole content is certified, but it can come from different certified sources. So if you're buying segregated beans, you know that they came from certified farms. Segregated isn't always possible for the full supply chain. That's why we also allow mass balance. In mass balance, certified and non-certified products can be physically mixed. but companies cannot sell more product as certified than the corresponding cocoa that was purchased as certified. So if you buy mass balance beans, then you know that an equivalent volume of certified beans has been produced. And this system has made it possible to scale up the market for more sustainable cocoa, which means more farmers benefit. These are the versions that we offer. Then the supply chains will differ, and it depends on the company what level is adopted. But I just wanted to take you through the possibilities. To record these transactions and the conversions, we're currently using 2 traceability portals. That's Marketplace for Rainforest Alliance cocoa and the Good Insight portal for UTS. And these portals record well over 40,000 transactions per year for more than 1.1 million tons of UTS and Rainforest Alliance cocoa. Next slide, please. So we go to 2021. So as of July next year, the new standard requirements will come into effect. New standard volumes can start entering the supply chain, and you see here the new seal on this slide as well. So this will add a 3rd program to our portfolio that will run side by side periodically while we transition to the new program fully. In 2021, we'll also transition from mass balance to origin matching mass balance. We see this as the evolution of mass balance, and I'll explain this a little bit more later on in the presentation. Lastly, we'll also switch to 1 traceability portal next year, and this will take place before the start of the new standards in July. From that point on, all 3 programs will be managed out of one and the same traceability portal. More information about the exact timelines will follow. Next slide, please. Then we jump to 2023, at which point we will be fully transitioned to the new standards by October 2023. So the current UTS and Rainforest Alliance volumes will no longer be available, and we'll just have 1 certification program. And we will also have that 1 traceability portal. And we will continue with our transition to origin matching mass balance. Due to the complexities of implementing this, we see this as a multi-year process, and we're taking a data-driven approach to inform the next phase of origin matching. And again, I'll explain that a little bit later. So this is where we will be in 2023. Next slide, please. Thanks. So as part of our new certification program, we'll be focusing more on several elements related to traceability. You've heard a few of these mentioned earlier already as well. And several people have already talked about the importance of geolocation data, traceability as well today, yesterday, and Monday even. We've already stepped up our geolocation requirements in cocoa the last 2 years. So now for most certified cocoa farmers, a GPS location is already required. That's to be submitted by the group itself. And as part of the new standard, polygons will also start to be required as well. We're also stepping up on first mile traceability, or last mile traceability, as Ashish called it, but it's that first part of the chain. First mile is an innovation program that we established in 2014 to develop digital approaches for data collection together with farm groups. And since its launch, we have digitized data for over with over 200,000 farmers. We're now also developing the Farm Intelligence app, which compiles the functionality and lessons learned from this first mile program into 1 tool that will be available for all Rainforest Alliance certificate holders globally. And data collected in the Farm Intelligence app will be owned by the certified group and not shared with the Rainforest Alliance until the certification manager approves the sharing of the data. We're also working on making data more transparent. So we're exploring how we can provide more access to data further down the supply chain through data footprinting. And lastly, origin matching mass balance will also provide more transparency about where cocoa comes from and where investments flow. More on that later. Next slide, please. So the role of traceability. We were asked to answer the question, why does cocoa need traceability? What will it solve? I'm sure we'll discuss this later, but I just wanted to share a few thoughts now. As has already been said during this conference, traceability itself is not the goal, but it's a tool to accomplish something else. It's an essential tool, but it's not the goal in and of its own. So if that goal is sustainable progress, then traceability must go hand in hand with sustainability efforts. Like Nico said earlier too, he said it's not just about where the cocoa comes from, but how the farmers' lives have actually improved. And Angela, you mentioned that as well. So what's also important to mention, I think, is that traceability can take many different forms. I talked about 3 earlier, and the right type of traceability and the right level must be considered. So is full end-to-end physical traceability needed to accomplish your goal or not? And lastly, shared responsibility. This is not something we as Rainforest Alliance can do alone. Tackling these issues is a shared responsibility for all the actors involved. Next slide, please. Mass balance. So now mass balance. I won't go into details of how this will work. I could easily fill a 2-hour webinar about origin matching, and some of the people in attendance can probably confirm that. But I do want to explain why we are doing this and what we intend to accomplish. Mass balance has been effective scaling up certification and reaching more farmers, but we believe mass balance must evolve. So we see origin matching as the evolution of mass balance. Under the current mass balance program, the flows of investments do not always match the flows of certified demand on country level. Many times they do, but not always. So we're introducing origin matching to address this imbalance and require companies to purchase certified cocoa from the countries that match the origin of cocoa used in certified products. As a result, certified supply chains will more closely mirror physical supply chains. It will help drive investments to the right countries, but it will still have some of the flexibility that mass balance provides. The first phase will start July next year, so together with the new standards, and starting with the beginning of the supply chain. We'll then take that data-driven approach that I mentioned to implement the next steps of the program, which will include extensive cocoa sector engagement as well, because we want to do this in a way that is both implementable for the industry, but also accomplishes our goal of origin matching. So if we keep the goal in mind and continue to work together on this, I'm sure we'll get there. Next slide, please. And that's my last slide as well. So in conclusion, what's important in traceability is that we keep the goal in mind. And for the Rainforest Alliance, that goal is a better future for people and nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben. Great presentations, clearly painted a diverse landscape. Manuel took us through the cocoa management system and how it's going to help them close the gap from farm to farm society, and also to enforce sustainability efforts and child labor efforts. Ashish took us through blockchain and how it ties and helps the growers. Nico laid out the case how traceability really helps to solve field problems, but also raised the issue of the growing regulatory environment that is pressuring the sector. Angela very clearly stated data requirements need to lead to action, really tying it again. This information is really, really needed by the sector to prioritize and solve problems in the field, and also articulated from the grower's perspective in terms of what they thought and how these systems help them. And Ruben took us through the traceability levels as part of the certification programs at RA, their plans going forward, the concept of origin mass balance, and the consolidation in terms of the traceability portals between RA and UTS. And again, importantly added that traceability is a tool, not a goal. The question that I would have for the panel is, given this landscape, given the pressures, what does the future of traceability look like for the cocoa sector? What are the obstacles and barriers that need to be addressed? It seems we have a lot of activities going on that are similar, so there might be a lot of duplication, but also more importantly is what's the role of the government in this, because we also have regulatory issues emerging. So I'd like to kick that off as for the discussion. And we'll start with Nico. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges is that we're at the sort of early stages, and there's a proliferation of different kind of databases or data sets, as you might call it. You know, you have farmers who are probably on multiple databases, and they've all got different codes on those different databases. And I think the future really lies in government owning what I would call the master data, which is the data where you have a farmer who, under like the CMS type system that Dr. Opoku has described, and it becomes a hub, and the hub can be fed into and drawn from. So the value of that hub is that the private sector initiatives can feed the data from that coded farmer, which is one central code in a master data type system, feed information to that central database, but also draw on it so that you can have initiatives for get land ownership documents for farmers, to get credit by doing credit assessment mechanisms like Experian in Europe, for example. You can use the data to create significant added value for farmers and ensure that it becomes interoperable. It's working for everybody. It's not just working as one platform for one private sector player, but it's a platform for everyone to use, and for purely in order that the farmer is benefiting from this interoperability, with the hub in the middle, information being fed in and information being drawn out. And I think that really is something we need to drive to, because one of the biggest hurdles is this early stage development we're at now, where there's lots of different systems all working and collecting data, and some farmers are not on any database, and some farmers are probably on 10 databases. And I think that's a hurdle we really need to tackle as soon as possible.
And if you look at sectors like the palm oil sector, where they're also going through this, and what emerged there was the universal mill list, so that every mill is mapped in geocoordinates and knowing who the parent owners are and all of that. I mean, that might be something to consider. Dr. Emmanuel, your thoughts? You're on mute.
Thank you very much. The future to us is very bright. You know, the system we have in Ghana, where you can go up to the society level, society from the court or from buyer, makes it a bit easier for us. So what is left is the missing gap, as I said. So that should not be a challenge too difficult to do. I must admit that there may be certain difficulties, but Nico has expressed one aspect of it, trying to make sure that we harmonize the current current data with what we are about to do, or what we are doing currently. And then the other one is ability to get the people who do the work in the field to understand and appreciate the need to maintain traceability. So what it means is that we have to have a very effective system there, where we can run them through the training, and that is where the support of all stakeholders will be important. So we can train these people who are to keep the traceability from the farm level, or from the farmer level to the last consumer. That is where I see the challenge coming from, but not with the technology. And then again, major logistical constraint, or the major challenge that we are likely to face, if we have a very effective system where we can train people to understand, and also a system where we can share information, because we cannot share different information or fragmented. We cannot work with fragmented information. We must have a complete system working, and then everybody can feed onto that system. And once we're able to work through that and achieve harmony, then I think that we'll be on course to preventing anything that will stop the direction we want to go.
As I look at this landscape, and you're sort of an outsider looking in with a technology tool. What are your thoughts on this question?
So I think the challenge, honestly, and just being candid with everybody, is I think the governments and the industry has to really embrace the fact that up until today, they've not allowed the farmer to own their data, access their data, permission their data, and monetize their data, right? And if you look at any of the subsystems, right, and I come from the traditional world, all of these subsystems that companies and governments are building, right out of the gate, they're non-GDPR compliant. So that's a problem in itself. And second, and I think Nico made a really good point, right? If you're not interoperable, then you are compromising the farmer's ability to prove their existence beyond cocoa, right? So I think, my humble recommendation would be, please respect the fact that the farmer is in the middle of all of this. And if you cannot work together to let them own, access, monetize, and permission their data, then you're just doing the same old thing which has happened to refugees, which every UN agency owns the refugees' data except the refugee. Over.
Thank you. Angela, your thoughts?
Just going to build on what has already been said, but there is a very good point about data ownership and something that we have to learn to navigate better as industry, and we have only started. My complementing thoughts is I like the idea of having one central database where it's clear. One of the big challenges that we face is who really owns the farm. And we can map the farms and we can know who is working in the farm. But one unknown question that has prevented into making longer term investments is we don't know who owns the farm. And so if there will be a one master database where that can be drawn from and the information is kept accurate and up to date, that will benefit us all. Where I struggle a little bit is when it comes to the tools around. And I saw some questions around and there are some ideas. And what I feel is, I think sometimes we are aiming for one magic Swiss Army tool that solves everything, whereas in reality, without any diminishing the Swiss Army knives, that I really enjoy them, but it's not. We are aiming for this one magical, very strong Swiss Army knife, whereas maybe what we need to aim for is a toolbox, because we are only now understanding what are the different tools that work for the farmer, for the technician, for suppliers that are in the ground, for governments, for companies such as us, and also for our consumers and our customers, right? So having that idea in how do we complement each other, that's where I see the future of traceability, with something that is at the core. And because at the end of the day, information from farmers, they belong to a country, then it does make sense for the government to take the lead on that.
And Ruben, your thoughts?
Thanks. I really like the metaphor of the Swiss Army knife in the toolbox. It's yeah, like I said, traceability itself is just a tool to accomplish that goal, and I think the same can be said for certification, which is a tool to help accomplish that goal. I believe a very important tool, but also just a tool in that toolbox. When you're talking about like the obstacles, like has been said, there's so many different initiatives, and it's hard to connect them all because I'm talking about certified cocoa, and within Rainforest Alliance, we're even working with 3 systems at the moment. Then you're talking about specific supply chains like Mars, Pericalabat, etc. And you have government initiatives that are national. So how do you connect all that? I don't have the answer, but that is. Yeah, there's a lot of duplication going on in collection of data and in submitting of data. We're asking for specific data, others are asking for data. So that's a complication. I think data ownership is really important, and it has to primarily be for the benefit of those farmers, and ownership has to lie there as well, and you have to respect that. I believe also that if transparency and data sharing leads to more benefits, then maybe that will help open things up more as well.
Thank you. The other issue that I see is that we're also, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking here about those direct farmers, right? But there's a whole nother segment of indirect farmers that we haven't addressed. And just curious as to your thoughts about those indirect farmers that go through other intermediaries in the supply chain.
Are you still asking me? Sorry.
We'll start with Ashish.
Yes, actually, we see that a lot in barley and coffee and others, where there's a major farm and there's a lot of labor on the farm. And one of the things that people miss is that what are the labor rights? What's the wage level of these workers, right? And again, I think the point was that technology is not going to solve anything, but I think technology lets you actually map what is that value chain that goes beyond that farmer and who are working on those farms. So in the tobacco industry, we look at that, right? In the barley industry, we look at that, because if you don't, to your point, then you're just focused on the smallholder farmer, and you're missing out all the labor that might be used, and they might be in really bad conditions. So, we take more of a holistic approach and say, what is the entire ecosystem? And that farmer may not be a smallholder farmer, but is working on a farm, especially in kind of refugee or IDP situations. Over.
Nico, your thoughts on that question?
I think this is a challenge that we all have to address, because you have to bear in mind that in cocoa, the vast majority of cocoa is supplied through third party or middlemen supply. So you have farm aggregator, probably middleman, another middleman, and then maybe ending up in the hands of the final user. What we are trying to understand is how there's two tools here. One is the data and the map, and the other is the traceability. So the traceability in itself is, as Ruben has said, is just a tool. It just says proofs. Right. It shows me where it came from, and it came from here, and it got to there. It doesn't tell you anything about what the conditions and the situation of the source is. It just tells you it came from there. Now that starts to become the problem with the third-party supply chain, is because when traceability, sometimes you might find things you don't want to know about, which obviously that's not the case. We all want to know about it, but we need to address it. We have huge challenges with a transition from traceable supply chains with third-party suppliers when you're asking for data and information about their source, when the value that they bring is that source, and they don't really want to declare it. So if this kind of universal approach, which is happening in Ghana, was to happen everywhere, then there is no need for them to hide that, because they may have that source, but that source, the data and the information about that source is on a central hub under sort of master data platform, and you can start transacting more openly with your third-party supply. Now, what we're trying to do is create protocols around third-party suppliers to say that we require you to give us this information about the source of the cocoa that you supply us. And if you're not willing to do that, then you cannot be a supplier. And what we need is everybody in the cocoa supply chains to do that, to say, if you don't provide it, you can't supply. And then it becomes a universal requirement. It's going to become law. We've seen it, the European due diligence regulation, the CBP, and it's going to become law, but not everywhere in the world, but it's going to become law in where the majority of cocoa is consumed in the world. Not all the cocoa, but where it's consumed in the world. And that will be a huge driver, but we need everybody to voluntarily say, right, you've got to tell me where it came from. And I've got to know the conditions of the farmer, the farm, the farmer's family, etc., that it is being grown in. Otherwise, I cannot buy that cocoa from you.
Dr. Opuko, your thoughts on that issue with the third-party suppliers? Will your system handle that? You're on mute.
Yes, here the main challenge has been the issue of child labor that everybody has been talking about. But the system we are putting in place will cover that. I mean, at the end of the day, it will be clear to everyone. The system will be so transparent. But when it comes to who is the farmer, who is the laborer, our system is going to record the owner of the farm. So we will recognize sharecroppers such as Abunu, but we have another type, which is a Busan and contract labor. Those way, our system will consider them as members of the farmer's household. Because if you are a Busan farmer, what it means is that you are sharing part of the crop. We are not. We are working to earn your wage through crop sharing or sharing of the crop. And in our communities, because of the labor situation, every community has its own way of settling the price of labor, adult labor, and it's not something you can cheat anyone. So if you want to engage adult labor, there's a price that the community accepts, and everybody works with it. If you engage a contract laborer, there's a price that is acceptable, and that is very transparent for all the people in the communities. So we don't have so much a problem with that showing or identifying what is right to pay to a sharecropper, because a sharecropper, if it is 3 parts sharing for the sharecropper to take 1 part, that is it. That is an established fact. If it is the other way around, where there's a daily wage rate, that is established and everybody knows. So it's that side is transparent. The only problem is the other one, which this system is going to track to make sure that no farmer uses child labor. It becomes easy for you to go in and track people or children in household, how their progress has been, and try to see where there are problems and raise a flag for the farmers involved in that to be taken off or arrested.
If I can just make a quick point, right? You have to tie the payments piece. That's a lot of businesses miss, is the payments piece to the household data and then correlate it to children. Because if you don't tie those 3 together, you're going to think you're paying a household, and then your child labor data is going to sit separate, and there's going to be workers on the farm that are being abused. So just a thought, you do need to tie payments to all those 3. Over.
Well, thank you. I didn't talk about how the payment system has been planned for this the CMS, because I thought it's not part of this whole process, because it's one of the key deliverables of the CMS, a payment system that once the cocoa gets to the point of sale, the clerk buys the cocoa and then he pays through the electronic platform, and the farmer gets it. But where the farmer has to pay his workers, that is clearly established. And I don't think any farmer would dare to cheat an agreed principle by which the produce is harvested and then sent to the point of sale. And as I said, where we'll have issues is where a farmer is using children to produce. But that one, it can easily be, now the transparent nature of the system we are developing, it will be easier for one to track and see who are doing that. But the payment itself is it's one of the major deliverables of the system we are developing. Over, sorry.
Okay, thank you. A different question from the audience, and it's for Dr. Opuko, Nico, and Angela's. How can civil society contribute by giving our supply chain, land use, and deforestation research free to you? In other words, providing third-party information into your initiatives. Nico?
Is very useful. I mean, and any information that, I mean, let me give you an example. So we've created using the data we have in our database, we've created a heat map to understand where is more likely to be incidents of child labor. And one of the most important elements of that is rural infrastructure. In other words, we take the data about the farmer and the farms and the farmer's family, but then overlay it with rural infrastructure data. So where the schools are, where water sources are, where communication lines are, like bridges across rivers and things like this, which then using algorithms, we have got to around about 70% accuracy on where we are likely to find incidents of child labor. Now, the more we can contribute to that database, the better. And again, it shouldn't just be, it's not a sort of binary relationship. This should be for the whole industry to be able to create a platform that you can take these sources of information and overlay it onto specific farmer data and use that to create machine learning on what is likely to be the situation on the field. Because one of the problems that we've had historically, and all the old boys like me around will be able to say, is that we've had too much time wasted on generalized approaches at farm level, when we need to have much more specific approaches at farm level and much more specific outcomes. So another kind of route that we would be very interested in going down is the concept of using data to be used, taking data to be used by credit scoring agencies, people with expertise, and they can use data from this type of platform. If it was a hub, like I was talking about, drawing that, overlaying it with things like mobile phone data, information on mobile phone usage from a farmer, and then taking that and using algorithms that they have to set a score, a rating for credit for farmers. Because one of the problems with farmers is that they're what's called zero file data, because they have no information. Nobody has any financial information about farmers. So people like me, they've got loads of financial information because I'm always borrowing money. Thank God I've paid it back most of the time. But when you have, the more money you borrow, pay back more, you have what's called a fat file. And the super wealthy have a thin file because they never really borrow money. They don't need to, they've got lots of cash. Farmers have zero file. And that's why mainstream banking doesn't get to farm level, because they don't know how to rate the risk. Now, you could use this data for that, and it would be incredible. It would be transformational. It would bring mainstream affordable banking via digital data and a digital platform directly to farmers individually. And that's the kind of outcome we could all drive together.
Thank you. I want to switch subjects here because we are running out of time. And if I go through kind of the group chat, about 95% of the comments and questions relate to the interoperability of the traceability systems and how people can work together and bring data together. And so for Dr. Opuko, what has to happen so that that can be a reality where the sector, the government, civil society are able to articulate sort of a common goal and vision to move in this direction, to create greater efficiencies, but also greater transparency?
Yes, the system we are developing recognizes that we have various stakeholders who are part of the supply chain and the entire value chain. So each stakeholder will have access to the system from one space where your activity is focused. But then we're also working with all our partners, including civil society, to make information sharing particularly easy for all stakeholders, because we recognize that the cocoa value or the cocoa supply chain, various stakeholders have roles to play, and the system will not shut anybody out. And so any relevant information that has to do that can improve the system, we will accept it. For example, we know that some private sector organizations already have similar data sets currently. We have already engaged some of them. The only thing is that we have a very comprehensive set of questions that we want to collect answers from the farmers. And those set of questions each one of them has a specific role or specific issues they can address. So we have very good reasons for that. That is why if, for example, one organization has similar data about farmers and wants to share, and for example, the type of questions or the type of answers we have, do not meet the set of questions we are asking, then it becomes a bit difficult. But the area under cultivation as something we can easily accept onto our system. The only challenge there is where we have about 5 farmers sharing boundary, and the private sector organization has the area covering only one of the farmers. We still have to go in there and put information. So this is a comprehensive set of work that we recognize everyone's involvement, and working together, I think will be a very important tool for us to achieve an effective system that will work for everyone within the supply chain. Over.
Thank you. Ruben, your thoughts. You're from civil society. What do you think? How can a coalition be built to bring this and centralize the information and share the information?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I'm not sure I have the definitive answer. I think it will have to involve some kind of third party. Nico mentioned an example of a possibility of that. I think I don't know if it would be a certification program to play the role. Maybe another type of third party system where that data can actually be captured and centralized. Yeah, I think it goes back again to making sure that the data is beneficial to farmers, and that you, because if you're talking about different supply chains for different companies, then those companies are competing in the same space. An example of something that we have done with the GPS data that we've collected that I mentioned earlier. So we have GPS or data location points for all the farmers in the group. That we use that to create a risk, and we do a risk analysis based on that data, and we share that specifically with the group. It doesn't have at that point consequences for the certification. It's more to identify risk, and then we follow that up with specific member monitoring of that group. So we visit that group, and that's all done before the audits. So that through the GPS data that we're collecting for all those farmers, we use that to help the farmers achieve certification and identify risk. We're able to do that because we have that GPS data, of course, but we only have that for certified farmers. So we can't do that for everyone because we don't have that data. So,
Angela, your thoughts?
I would just complement saying that what I can see civil society's 2 things is the challenges that we face in the supply chains are very big. And like I've been saying more than once today, is we cannot do this alone. There's no way one company alone can do it. So it's how can we tap on the information or expertise or anything that it's brought back to us and tell us how we are doing and how we can improve as well, which we do. We receive many comments directly and we take that on board and we respond to those as well. The second thought is, even if we are one of the largest end users of cocoa in the world, there are other people out there as well, and there are other brands and there are other products. So unless you are buying a product for a company that has made a commitment to a deforestation free for all the cocoa that they are buying, that they use, then I would say ask them to show you where the cocoa is being originated. Ask them to disclose your supply chain. That's what we need. We need everybody to care. We just not need a few brands. And last but not least, I would say this is where regulation also kicks in. And civil society is very much welcome to participate and to support and draft and help shape this regulation. So there's quite a big role also for others. So yes, I would say there's quite a lot to do.
Thank you.
You know, I would just throw out that the word centralized scares me, because it's really, the minute you say centralized, there's a ownership issue, right? I like everything you guys are saying. I would just give you an outsider's perspective and say decentralized, where ownership is very clearly at the farmer level. So the farmer can choose, hey, I don't want to sell to Hershey's or Mars, and I want to sell to Olam, right? And that bankability piece that Nico brought, right? If you go down a centralized path, then it's no different from, you know, all of your M-Pesa data is sitting with Vodafone, and you can't prove you're a farmer for Barry Callebaut, and you'll never be bankable, to Nico's point, right? So please factor that in. Over.
Thank you. No, I see this as sort of, yes, it's complicated, but I also see it as a great opportunity. I mean, the sector has been wrestling with these for a long time. They are making progress, but I think you probably make a lot more progress by working together and sorting through this. And also, you'd be able to use your resources much more efficiently and move a lot quicker, just in terms of data sharing and everything else. And I think it's a missed opportunity, but more importantly, it's also a great opportunity for just, you know, Ghana to sort of plant the flag for the sector that this is the way we're going as a direction, and really kind of help set the tone to start working much more in a collaborative fashion with all of the stakeholders involved. Any comments?
Well, I want to assure our partners, the cocoa world, that we are on track to deliver a system that is perhaps novel, but effective. You know, making sure that there's transparency in the supply chain, because it's our key concern. Because sometimes the things you hear, you may think the world really doesn't understand what the situation is on the ground. So to come up with this issue of cocoa management system, it has taken us a great thought to develop the system, and we hope that all our partners will join us to ensure we, at the end of the day, have a system that is so effective and will work for the entire industry, or for the entire supply chain, to build confidence of consumers and industry. Over.
Thank you. It looks as if we have run out of time. I'd like to thank the panel for their presentations and the discussion. And with that, I guess we're done.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.